Welcome to the 2021 Economic Depression and Preparation Channel. I'm your host, Tony. Thank you for joining me on this weekend edition, August the 1st, 2021. Please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate your support, as always. And today we're just going to be talking about three topics: this economy and how everything is supposedly on the recovery because bills are being passed and they're saying that, think the rates are low and cheap money and everybody's on the euphoria because the vaccinations are supposedly working. At the same time, we have all these contradictory variants coming out and a lot of contradictory information coming out from both the economy and with the virus situation. And also, three ways small businesses should prepare for a second shutdown that could be happening in the fall. No one knows the date, but there could be another shutdown in America. Other countries have followed suit already, such as France and the UK. Other countries as well have followed suit in terms of shutdown. So we're going to talk about that today briefly. So the first thing is that we have the Fed holds rates near zero. Economy has gotten better even with the pandemic worries, supposedly. The thing is, this economy is missing jobs, and as you can note here, the 10-year T-note, Treasury note, is still at 1.256%. That's not a good sign because we had inflation still growing, and this yield note continues to get lower and lower, and that points to a massive deflationary crisis, a massive bubble crisis, just like in the 1929 Great Depression. Only difference this time is that we're going to have inflation first and then a massive deflation crisis. And when that happens, my friends, cash is going to be king. Your supplies that you have on you, on hand, will be king at that time. And not to mention gold and silver and other preparations that others have said. As long as the power grid stays up, crypto as well will be worth something. Not saying it's going to be going to the moon, but it will be worth something variable. So don't forget about those things. But I just want to bring that to your attention is that they're painting one picture in the media that this thing, the Dow Jones and the stock market, but you have to remember, as U.S. Press Secretary Jen Psaki said, the stock market is not the U.S. economy. I think people forget that. Stock market is based on speculation, future growth, etc. It's not based on what's really going on the front lines on Main Street. And you have to remember that, six companies, the FANG stocks, they always talk about control over 85 to 90% of what goes on in the stock market anyway. And that's a fact. So we have to remember that's not the biggest economy. We're still buying $120 billion of bonds. That's the central bank, the Federal Reserve Bank Chairman Jerome Powell says he will continue to do that. But instead, that's fueling a housing bubble that is apt to pop at any moment now or any day now. Nobody knows, but it's coming closer and closer to that point. MarketWatch says today the U.S. economy is bigger than ever. Well, we know that, but it's still got a few problems too. Shortages of labor and supplies drive inflation higher and retard the economic recovery. And basically, what it is shortages of good paying jobs in America that has gutted the economy. And supply chain issues are going to continue through 2023, ladies and gentlemen. And that means supplies on anything from cars to electronics to generators to anything that you may need. Anything that you may need to survive or live, there's going to be a supply shortage through 2023, or maybe even through the whole President Biden's first whole term if he makes it through 2024. So we have to be prepared for that. Last time this year, the guy says, quote, the U.S. economy was facing a near Great Depression scenario, says Chief Economist Scott Anderson of the Bank of the West. And so now what a difference a year makes. So they're painting this picture that there's a recovery, but here's the key piece. Missing jobs is still a big problem for the economy. And automation and robotics, if you have any children or young kids, get them into that early because that's going to be the future. As you know, this whole transhumanism movement in the economy is combining human features in a robotic form for production cost and everything else, from building plants. All of the big companies, from Amazon to Sun Microchips to Cisco to, you name it, they're going to be doing that and replacing workers. Even Walmart, same thing. Right now, as you know, they're forcing mandatory vaccinations for federal workers. That's going to go down to state and local, and of course, private sector. They may do the same too, and they're going to tell you, well, if you don't, do what you got to do, take the jab, which is fine. They're going to say if you don't do it, but for those who refuse, they're going to say, oh, well, we'll just replace you with a robot, or you just have to find a job elsewhere. So that, coupled with the pandemic, is going to bring this economy to another Great Depression. Although most of the 22 million people who were laid off early in the pandemic have gone back to their jobs, the labor force is still missing 6.7 million workers. This is a conservative figure. We're missing more like 10 million workers right now. And it's not because people don't want to work. The majority of people do want to work. Americans, we all do. It's just that there's not enough jobs for everyone to serve everyone. High-paying jobs to serve everyone, because the average rental price now for a one-bedroom or a two-bedroom apartment, if you're working a minimum wage or slightly above that, you can't afford that on a $10 to $12 hour or $15 hour salary after taxes and all of that. So and that's something that with the economists, and that's something that the U.S. has to deal with right now, and that's just going to be disastrous. So we're going to continue to see a shutdown looming as kids go back to school in September, I believe, early September. Some have already starting to make preparations for that. So even with the vaccinations, even with everything going on, and sunshine and rainbows, there's a possibility of a second shutdown in many of these states, even with fully vaccinated individuals. And so this is going to be the issue right here, because this is going to further cripple this economy that was relying on stimulus money and on all kind of other things. And so I suggest that you continue to stock up on masks, continue to stock up on vitamin C, zinc, elderberry. Even if you've taken the vaccinations already, just continue to stock up on these things. These things are going to become gold. Cash is king with businesses. Liquid cash is king if you can get it and access it, because the ATMs may start limiting withdrawals later on in the wintertime. Banks may stop. Everybody's trying to transition off of cash, but cash is still needed for barterability and other segments. Restaurants are only doing takeout, so you might also I try not to eat out as much, but I really think cooking at home is the best thing. Stash cash. Like I said, this is the best thing you can do if you're a small business or individual, because once the hyperinflation ends and all of these bubble pops, we're going to be in a deflationary environment like the Great Depression, and many people didn't have cash on hand to transact or buy goods and services or exchange it for an electronic coin or whatever. So if you do have cash on hand, keep it, because that's what started this whole thing in the beginning. It wasn't the pandemic. It was a shortage of cash between banks, known as the repo market, where the banks lend money to each other overnight, and it's a whole complicated process. But basically, that's what they do. And the banks they felt like they had a shortage of cash, and so that's why the Federal Reserve is still stepping in and buying all these bonds and treasuries and everything else, because there's a shortage of liquid cash on the market. Yeah, there's digital cash, but liquid cash on the market, actual cash at these banks and stuff, is short. And so that's what's going to become gold on the streets as well for us as individuals, as Americans. So I know people think, oh, cash is trash, and maybe it is, but you're gonna need some when things hit the fan. You're gonna wish you're gonna have some of those greenbacks on hand, not stored away somewhere under your mattress or somewhere. You know what I mean? So and continue to increase your security measures. This is society's cyber security measures for businesses. That's important too. But you want to harden your physical security, as you know, for an individual, because crimes are going up. There was reports in Houston that people were stealing tires off of cars in apartment complexes and condo complexes and townhomes. Especially after they love Honda Civics and Honda Accords with those sporty rims. Those are those are targets for a lot of the thieves going on. So thefts are going to go up with catalytic converters. People stealing copper out of air conditioning units, both commercial and residential in Los Angeles and other places. So people are going to steal whatever is not locked down and tied down. So increase your security. As you already know, that's going to be the primary thing as crime goes up. And so the lockdown will be good for that, because security will be of utmost priority for both government, businesses, and individuals going through this second shutdown that we're going to experience, because people are going to be frustrated, when the movements are going to be curtailed by this kind of medical martial law that we're going to be experiencing this time around. The first lockdown was a little bit easier to handle, but this second lockdown could last possibly months, ladies and gentlemen, because they've already told you about the vaccines. They've already done everything, they've already given all the money to the companies, and they've already done as much as they can. And now they're basically saying, President Biden basically saying that, he wants this thing to be solved. But we know that just like the flu is around every year, this corona is going to be around every year, regardless of a vaccine or not. And it's just going to be one of those things that's going to create a big mess for the economy, a big mess for individuals. Nothing is going to be the same. We're never returning to normal again. Even if we get 100 vaccines, we're never returning to normal again. This is the new America that we're heading into. Unfortunately, it's sad to say, and I just pray for everyone. I pray for myself. I pray for my family. I pray for you guys, because this is a new America. hate to say it, and the economy and everything from politically, socially, spiritually is heading towards a sort of totalitarianism or communism or whatever you want to call it, a fascism or something that is a new world order. And so we're never getting back to the normal stuff. And that's just sad to see. From malls to schools to banks to churches, everything is totally gone haywire, regardless if you're independent, a Republican, a Democratic. We're in a whole different world, a brave new world. So pull out your 1984 books again and start reading them, and figuring out how different ways to survive too as well. But we'll get through this. God will see us through. I thank you for your support, and I look forward to talking to you soon on the next video. Have a blessed weekend. Talk to you soon.